Sometimes the people who know you best fall in love with your future before you ever see it yourself. If you had asked me 6 months ago whether my best friend and I looked like a couple, I would have laughed so hard I probably would have spilled my coffee. Ethan Brooks had been my best friend since freshman year of college. We survived impossible finals together, terrible apartments with unreliable heat, 2 cross-country moves, and more late-night pizza runs than either of us would ever admit to our doctors. Somewhere along the way, our lives had simply woven themselves together so naturally that neither of us questioned it anymore. We had separate apartments across the street from each other in downtown Seattle, separate careers, separate bank accounts, and completely separate dating histories. Yet somehow Ethan still had a spare key to my place, knew exactly how I took my coffee, and could tell from the sound of my voice whether I'd slept well the night before. I knew which grocery store carried his favorite barbecue chips, remembered every anniversary of his father's heart procedure, and could predict within 5 minutes whether a new movie would make him laugh or quietly wipe away tears he insisted were allergies. To us, it was friendship. To literally everyone else, it apparently looked like something entirely different. It all started on a sunny Saturday afternoon when Ethan convinced me to drive with him to his parents' house for their annual backyard barbecue. His mother, Olivia Brooks, had been inviting me to family gatherings for years, insisting I wasn't a guest anymore but simply another member of the family. I never argued because, if I was being honest, those weekends had become something I quietly looked forward to. The smell of grilled burgers, Daniel Brooks telling the same fishing stories every summer, Emma teasing her older brother about absolutely everything, and Olivia making enough homemade desserts to feed an entire neighborhood somehow felt comforting in a way my own quiet apartment never could. As soon as Ethan parked his truck in the driveway, the front door flew open before either of us could step out. Emma practically skipped across the lawn with the biggest grin I'd ever seen. "Finally," she shouted. "Mom was taking bets on whether you two would be late together again." Ethan laughed while grabbing the cooler from the truck bed. "We are not together." Emma rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might stay there. "Sure you're not." She hooked her arm around mine before I could answer and pulled me toward the house. "Come on, Mason. Mom already saved your favorite peach cobbler." Inside, Olivia greeted me with the same warm hug she always did before kissing Ethan on the cheek. "There's my boys," she said without thinking, smiling as if those 3 simple words were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel looked up from seasoning steaks on the kitchen counter and chuckled. "You know," he said casually, "after 12 years, I stopped trying to figure out when you two were going to announce it." Ethan nearly dropped the cooler. "Announce what?" Daniel blinked, genuinely confused. "That you're dating." Silence settled over the kitchen for exactly 3 seconds before every member of the Brooks family burst into laughter. Everyone except Ethan and me. We exchanged the same bewildered look we'd shared 100 times over the years whenever someone made that assumption. I opened my mouth to explain, but Olivia simply smiled, patted my shoulder affectionately, and said, "Sweetheart, you don't have to tell us today if you're not ready." Before I could respond, the front doorbell rang, and Emma glanced through the window. Her playful smile disappeared for just a heartbeat. "Oh," she murmured quietly. "I didn't know Tyler was actually coming." Ethan turned toward the door with a puzzled expression. "Who's Tyler?" The front door swung open, and a tall man stepped inside carrying a bouquet of fresh sunflowers and a bakery box tied with a blue ribbon. He looked about our age, maybe 28, with sandy blonde hair neatly combed to one side, a crisp navy button-down shirt, and the kind of confident smile that immediately put strangers at ease. "Sorry I am late," he said warmly. "Traffic coming from Bellevue was a nightmare." Olivia's face lit up. "Tyler, we are so happy you made it." She hurried over to hug him before turning toward us. "Everyone, this is Tyler Lawson. He is the son of one of my closest friends from church. He just transferred here for work." Tyler shook Daniel's hand before smiling politely at Emma and then at Ethan and me. "Nice to meet both of you." Ethan offered a friendly handshake. "Welcome to the family barbecue." I smiled as well, thinking nothing of it. Tyler seemed perfectly pleasant. We all drifted into the backyard where the smell of charcoal and grilled vegetables filled the warm afternoon air. Kids chased each other across the lawn, while neighbors wandered through the open gate carrying homemade side dishes. It felt like every other Brooks family gathering I had attended, except for one strange detail. Every few minutes, Olivia found another reason to leave Tyler standing next to me. First, she asked him to help carry lemonade while I grabbed glasses. Then she insisted we both bring silverware outside. Later, she volunteered us to arrange folding chairs together. I leaned toward Ethan while Tyler was helping Daniel uncover the grill. "Does your mom usually organize people this much?" Ethan chuckled quietly. "Only when she thinks she has a brilliant idea." "Should I be worried?" "Probably not." He sounded unconcerned, but his smile faded just enough for me to notice. Half an hour later, everyone settled around the long picnic table beneath the maple trees. Conversation bounced naturally from baseball to travel plans to Emma's latest promotion. Tyler turned toward me with an easy grin. "Olivia told me you work in architectural design. That sounds fascinating." "It definitely keeps me busy. Maybe sometime you could show me around the city. I barely know anyone here." Before I could answer, Ethan spoke without even looking up from his plate. "Mason already promised to help me repaint my apartment next Saturday." The words came out so automatically that all of us paused. Ethan blinked as though he had surprised himself. "Actually, I forgot we already made plans." Tyler nodded politely. "Another weekend then." The conversation moved on, but I caught Emma watching Ethan with an amused expression. She slowly lifted one eyebrow before taking another bite of potato salad. An hour later, Daniel asked for volunteers to bring coolers into the garage before the evening rain arrived. Tyler immediately stood. "I can help." I reached for one handle at the same time he did, but Ethan stepped between us almost absent-mindedly. "I have it." He grabbed the cooler beside me instead. "Mason, you take the lighter one." Tyler stepped back with a courteous smile, yet I noticed Emma quietly covering her mouth to hide a laugh. As we walked toward the garage, I lowered my voice. "You know you did not have to rescue me from carrying a cooler." Ethan looked genuinely confused. "I was just helping." "You interrupted him twice today." "Did I?" He frowned for a moment before shrugging. "I guess I did." We finished unloading everything and returned to the backyard where the laughter had grown even louder. Olivia was slicing peach cobbler while Tyler offered to pour coffee for everyone. I thanked him as he handed me a mug, and before I could even take a sip, Olivia suddenly clapped her hands together with unmistakable excitement. "This settles it," she announced. "Next Saturday, Tyler can take Mason out to dinner." Every conversation around the table stopped. My heart skipped for reasons I could not explain. Across from me, Ethan slowly lowered his coffee cup onto the table with far more force than necessary. The faint clink echoed through the sudden silence, and for the first time all afternoon, the smile had completely disappeared from his face. For a long second, nobody said anything. Then Ethan cleared his throat and forced a polite smile. "That sounds like a nice idea, Mom. But you probably should have asked Mason before making plans for him." Olivia looked genuinely surprised. "I was only suggesting dinner. Tyler just moved here, and Mason knows the city better than anyone." Tyler raised both hands with an easy laugh. "There is absolutely no pressure. If you are busy, I completely understand." I smiled appreciatively. "Thank you. I just have to check my schedule first." Ethan nodded once, but something about his expression felt different. He was still smiling, still perfectly polite, yet I noticed he had become unusually quiet. Normally, he would have made a joke to lighten the mood. Instead, he focused on finishing his coffee while absent-mindedly tapping one finger against the ceramic mug. Emma noticed it too. As everyone drifted toward the backyard games, she casually fell into step beside me. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Sure." "Has Ethan always looked at you like that?" I blinked. "Like what?" She tilted her head toward her brother, who was helping Daniel set up a cornhole board across the lawn. "Never mind." "Emma." She laughed softly. "Forget it. You probably really do not see it." Before I could ask what she meant, Olivia called everyone over for a family photo. Without thinking, Ethan walked straight to my side, just as he always did. Daniel stood on Ethan's other side while Olivia arranged everyone into rows. Tyler politely took a place near Emma at the opposite end. Olivia looked through her phone camera and frowned. No. Tyler, come stand closer to Mason. Tyler immediately started walking toward me. At almost the exact same moment, Ethan shifted half a step without saying a word. By the time Tyler reached us, there was no longer enough space beside me. Tyler paused awkwardly before smiling and joining the row behind us instead. Emma covered her mouth again, clearly trying not to laugh. Click. The picture was taken. Perfect, Olivia announced happily. Although honestly, Ethan and Mason always end up standing together anyway. Everyone chuckled except the two of us. I looked over at Ethan. Did you even realize you moved? He frowned in confusion. Moved where? Never mind. He honestly seemed not to remember doing it. That unsettled me more than if he had admitted it. The afternoon slipped by with easy conversation, backyard games, and homemade desserts. Tyler fit in surprisingly well. He was thoughtful, funny without trying too hard, and genuinely interested in everyone around him. I could understand why Olivia wanted him to feel welcome. Before sunset, Tyler walked over while I was helping Daniel stack folding chairs. Would you still be interested in grabbing dinner sometime next week? He asked kindly. Even if it is just as friends? I appreciated how straightforward he was. I think that would be nice. Before either of us could say another word, Ethan appeared carrying another stack of chairs. There you are, he said to me. I have been looking everywhere. I smiled. You have? Yes. Your phone has been ringing for the last 5 minutes. I thought maybe your client was calling. Instantly concerned, I reached into my pocket. The screen was completely dark. No missed calls. No notifications. I looked back at Ethan. He glanced at my phone, paused for one brief second, and then rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe I heard someone else's ringtone. Tyler looked between us but politely excused himself to help Daniel inside the garage. As soon as he disappeared, I stared at Ethan. You made that up. His cheeks actually turned faintly red. I honestly thought your phone rang. It was the weakest excuse I had ever heard him make in 12 years of friendship. On the drive back to Seattle that evening, neither of us mentioned Tyler for almost 20 minutes. Soft classic rock played through the speakers while the highway lights stretched across the windshield. Finally, I broke the silence. Do you think Tyler is a good guy? Ethan kept his eyes on the road longer than necessary before answering. Yes. Then why did it feel like you did not want me talking to him today? His hands tightened almost imperceptibly around the steering wheel. The silence that followed lasted just long enough to make my question feel heavier than I had intended. And when Ethan finally spoke, his answer was so unexpected that I forgot to breathe for a moment. I waited, expecting Ethan to laugh and brush the question aside the way he always did whenever conversations became even slightly uncomfortable. Instead, he kept his eyes fixed on the highway, the dashboard lights casting soft blue reflections across his face. Because I do not know him, he finally said. That is all. I frowned. You have known plenty of people for 5 minutes and liked them immediately. This feels different. Different how? Another long pause settled between us. I cannot explain it. His answer should have satisfied me, but somehow it did not. Ethan was one of the most rational people I had ever met. He never judged strangers without a reason. Yet tonight he sounded almost unsettled. By the time we reached my apartment building, the conversation had drifted to work deadlines and weekend errands, as though neither of us wanted to revisit the subject. Before I climbed out of his truck, Ethan smiled again, looking much more like himself. Do not forget we are repainting my apartment Saturday morning. I remember. 8 o'clock. I laughed. You really think I would oversleep? You absolutely would. That familiar teasing finally eased the strange tension between us. We bumped fists the way we always did before heading into our separate buildings across the street. Still, as I watched his truck disappear around the corner, I could not shake the feeling that something had quietly shifted between us, even if neither of us knew exactly what it was. Tuesday evening arrived with steady rain tapping against my office windows. I had just finished reviewing blueprints when my phone buzzed. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. His message was simple. Would Thursday evening work for dinner? There is a new Italian restaurant downtown that everyone keeps recommending. I stared at the screen for several seconds before replying. Thursday sounds good. Looking forward to it. Less than a minute later, another message appeared. This time from Ethan. Pizza tonight? I already ordered your favorite pepperoni and mushroom. I smiled. The timing was almost ridiculous. That had happened dozens of times over the years. Somehow Ethan always texted right when I was thinking about food. I answered yes and headed home after work. As usual, he was already waiting in my apartment, using the spare key I had insisted he keep years ago for emergencies that had gradually turned into ordinary Tuesday nights. The pizza boxes sat open on my kitchen counter while a basketball game played quietly on television. Everything felt comfortably familiar until my phone lit up again. Tyler had sent a photo of the restaurant along with a message saying he hoped I liked homemade pasta. Ethan glanced toward the screen without meaning to. Who is that? Tyler. I answered naturally. We are having dinner Thursday. Ethan reached for another slice of pizza but stopped halfway. Already? You make it sound like we are getting married. I laughed, expecting him to joke back. He did not. Instead, he took a slow bite before quietly asking, "Do you actually want to go?" The question caught me off guard. Why would I not? I do not know. He shrugged. Forget I asked. We spent the rest of the evening watching the game, but something felt slightly off rhythm, like two musicians who suddenly could not hear the same beat. When Ethan finally headed home, he forgot his favorite gray hoodie draped across my couch. That alone was unusual. He never forgot anything. The next afternoon, Emma called me during my lunch break. I need to ask you something, and you have to promise you will answer honestly. That depends on the question. She laughed. Has Ethan always looked disappointed whenever another guy shows interest in you? I nearly dropped my sandwich. What are you talking about? Because everybody in my family noticed it on Saturday. My pulse unexpectedly quickened. Everybody except the two of you. Before I could respond, another call flashed across my screen. Ethan. For a brief moment, I stared at both names, suddenly wondering if everyone else had been seeing something that we had somehow missed all these years. For several seconds, I simply stared at my phone while Emma's words echoed through my head. Everybody except the two of you. It sounded ridiculous. Ethan and I had been best friends for 12 years. We had celebrated birthdays together, helped each other move apartments, survived layoffs, family illnesses, broken relationships, and countless ordinary Tuesdays with pizza and basketball games. Of course, people assumed things. We spent a lot of time together. That did not mean there was anything more to it. Mason? Emma asked gently. Are you still there? Yes. Cleared my throat. I think everyone is reading too much into normal friendship. She laughed softly, but there was kindness in it instead of teasing. Maybe you two have been living like an old married couple for so long that neither of you notices anymore. Before I could answer, Ethan's incoming call disappeared. A second later, a text replaced it. Call me when you have a minute. Nothing urgent. Somehow the words made me even more curious. After lunch, I stepped outside the office and called him back. He answered almost immediately. Hey, everything okay? Yes. His voice sounded relaxed again. I left my hoodie at your place. I was wondering if I could grab it after work. I smiled. You own at least 10 hoodies. That one is comfortable. You mean it is old? He laughed, finally sounding like himself. That too. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. Yet after hanging up, I realized we had somehow managed not to mention Tyler once. Thursday arrived faster than expected. Around 6 o'clock, I met Tyler outside the small Italian restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. The place was cozy rather than fancy, filled with warm lighting, fresh bread, and quiet conversations. Tyler was exactly the same as he had been at the barbecue. Thoughtful, easygoing, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about architecture, hiking trails, favorite movies, and why both of us secretly believed bookstores smelled better than coffee shops. The evening was comfortable. There were no awkward silences, no forced conversations, and no pressure. Halfway through dinner, Tyler smiled over his glass of iced tea. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you and Ethan actually dating?" I almost laughed into my drink. "No. Really? Really?" Tyler nodded slowly. "Then I owe your family an apology because they definitely convinced me otherwise." I shook my head, smiling despite myself. "Apparently they have convinced half the city." Tyler laughed. "I can see why, though." "Why?" "Because every time someone mentioned your name at the barbecue, Ethan looked at you before anyone else did." His words landed much harder than Emma's had. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. "Ethan." I hesitated only briefly before answering. "Hey, sorry to interrupt," he said. "I know you are busy. It is okay. I just wanted to let you know your apartment building emailed everyone. The water will be shut off tomorrow morning until noon. I figured you might not have seen it." I smiled. "Thanks for looking out for me. Always." The word came so naturally that neither of us acknowledged it. After we hung up, Tyler leaned back in his chair with an amused expression. "See what I mean?" I looked down at my untouched pasta. "He is just thoughtful." "Maybe." Tyler smiled politely. "Or maybe he has been taking care of you for so long that neither of you notices anymore." I had heard almost the exact same sentence twice in 2 days. It should not have bothered me. Instead, it stayed with me all evening. When dinner ended, Tyler walked me to my car. "I had a really nice time," he said. "Would you like to do this again sometime?" Before I could answer, I noticed a familiar gray pickup truck slowly passing through the parking lot. Ethan never came downtown on Thursday nights. The truck did not stop. It simply rolled past the restaurant entrance before disappearing around the corner, and for one impossible second, I could have sworn the driver had been looking directly at us. For a moment, I stood beside my car with my keys still in my hand, watching the gray pickup disappear into the evening traffic. Maybe it had not even been Ethan. Seattle had thousands of trucks that looked almost identical. I told myself I was imagining things because too many people had spent the past week planting strange ideas in my head. Tyler followed my gaze before looking back at me. "Everything all right?" I forced a small smile. "Yes. I thought I recognized someone." He nodded without pressing the issue. "I had a great time tonight, Mason." "I did too. Think about another dinner sometime." "I will." We shook hands before heading our separate ways, and the drive home felt unusually quiet. My mind kept replaying tiny moments from the past several days. Ethan stepping between Tyler and me during the family photo, forgetting his hoodie, calling to remind me about the water shutdown, showing up downtown for no apparent reason. None of those things proved anything. Separately, they were perfectly ordinary. Together, they formed a pattern I had somehow never noticed before. When I reached my apartment building, I glanced across the street. Ethan's kitchen light was already on. Normally, I would walk over without thinking, knock once, and let myself in. Tonight, I hesitated. It was the first time in years I had questioned something that had always felt effortless. My phone buzzed before I even unlocked my front door. "Ethan, are you home yet?" I smiled despite myself and typed back, "Just got here." 5 seconds later, another message appeared. "Good. I was making coffee. Come over if you want a cup." I laughed quietly. Some things never changed. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at Ethan's kitchen island while he poured freshly brewed coffee into our favorite oversized mugs. His apartment looked exactly as it always had, except for the half-finished painting supplies stacked neatly against one wall. "How was dinner?" he asked casually while handing me my mug. "It was nice." "That is good." He nodded once and stirred cream into his own coffee. Silence settled between us. Not an awkward silence, just the familiar kind that longtime friends shared comfortably. Still, tonight it somehow felt different. I caught him glancing at me twice before looking away each time. Finally, I smiled. "You can ask." He looked up. "Ask what?" Whatever has been on your mind all week. He leaned back against the counter, folded his arms, then slowly exhaled. Do you like him? The question arrived so quietly that I almost missed it. I considered my answer carefully. I think Tyler is kind. Ethan nodded. That is not what I asked. His response caught me completely off guard. I stared at him. I barely know him. I know. He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug as though warming them. Forget it. No. I shook my head. You asked for a reason. Ethan looked down at the floor for several long seconds before giving a small, almost embarrassed smile. I guess I was just wondering how much room there is left in your life if someone new becomes important. My heart skipped unexpectedly. Ethan. Before I could finish, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and answered immediately. Hey, Mom. Olivia's cheerful voice was loud enough that I could hear parts of the conversation from across the kitchen. Perfect, she said. I wanted to catch both of you. Do not make plans for Sunday. Ethan looked over at me. Why? Because your father and I are hosting family dinner, and Mason is coming too. I laughed. I did not know I had already accepted. Olivia chuckled. Sweetheart, you stopped needing invitations years ago. Ethan smiled for the first time all evening. We will both be there. Olivia hesitated just long enough to sound suspiciously pleased. Wonderful. There is someone else I would like both of you to meet. Ethan frowned. Who? Her answer came with unmistakable excitement. Tyler asked if he could come to dinner again, and I told him yes. The smile disappeared from Ethan's face so quickly that even before he said a single word, I knew Sunday was not going to be an ordinary family dinner. Sunday afternoon arrived with clear skies and the kind of cool breeze that made early fall in Seattle feel almost perfect. Ethan picked me up at exactly 1 o'clock, just as he always did for family dinners. Neither of us mentioned Tyler during the drive, but the silence felt different this time. It was not uncomfortable. It was cautious, as though both of us were carefully avoiding a conversation neither of us fully understood. When we pulled into the Brooks family's driveway, Olivia opened the front door before we even reached the porch. There are my favorite people, she said brightly before pulling both of us into quick hugs. Daniel was already arranging drinks in the backyard, while Emma greeted us with a grin that looked far too knowing for my comfort. You two even showed up wearing matching colors again, she said. Ethan looked down at his navy sweater before glancing at my dark blue flannel. We both blinked. Neither of us had planned it. That is just a coincidence, Ethan replied. Emma simply smiled. Sure it is. Inside the kitchen, Olivia asked me to help carry serving dishes outside while Ethan joined Daniel near the grill. As we walked together, Olivia spoke quietly enough that only I could hear. Mason, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Yes. Why? She smiled warmly. Because sometimes people become so comfortable that they stop asking themselves whether they are truly happy or simply afraid to change. Before I could think of an answer, Tyler arrived carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers for Olivia and a homemade apple pie from a neighborhood bakery. Daniel welcomed him enthusiastically, while Emma whispered something that made Tyler laugh. Everything seemed perfectly normal until lunch was served. Without anyone assigning seats, Ethan pulled out the chair beside him before I even reached the table. I sat down automatically, only realizing what I had done after everyone else was already seated. Tyler ended up directly across from us. Emma looked from one side of the table to the other before exchanging an amused glance with her mother. Halfway through lunch, Tyler smiled politely. Mason, I found tickets for the architecture exhibit you mentioned. They have an opening next Saturday if you would like to go. I had completely forgotten mentioning it during dinner. That actually sounds interesting. Before I could say anything else, Ethan quietly asked, Next Saturday? Yes. I thought we were finishing the guest room painting that day. I frowned. I thought we already finished it yesterday. Ethan opened his mouth, then stopped. Daniel looked up from carving chicken and raised an eyebrow. Son, the painting is done. Ethan nodded slowly. Right? It is. An awkward silence settled over the table for just a moment before Tyler rescued the conversation with an easy smile. Another weekend works too. The topic shifted, but I could not ignore the strange look Ethan gave his untouched plate afterward. Later that afternoon, everyone gathered in the backyard while Daniel started a family horseshoe tournament. Emma pulled me aside near the garden. "I need you to stop overthinking." "I am not overthinking," she laughed. "Mason, my brother has spent 12 years making sure you never have to face anything alone. The first time another man asks you out twice, Ethan suddenly forgets how to act like himself." I sighed. "He is just protective." "No," she shook her head gently. "He has always been protective. This is something else." Before I could respond, Daniel called everyone toward the patio for dessert. As we walked back together, I noticed Ethan standing alone near the maple tree, watching the conversation between Tyler and me from across the yard. The expression on his face was not anger. It was something quieter, something uncertain, something that looked remarkably like fear. A few minutes later, while everyone was distracted by Olivia serving pie, Ethan quietly touched my elbow. "Can we talk?" His voice was calm, but there was an unfamiliar seriousness in it that immediately made my heart race, and before I could answer, he added 6 words that changed the entire afternoon. "Somewhere nobody else can hear us." I followed Ethan toward the quiet front porch, away from the laughter drifting out of the backyard. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the wooden steps, and for the first time in all the years I had known him, he looked genuinely nervous. He slipped both hands into the pockets of his jeans, then took them right back out again as though he could not decide what to do with them. "You are making me think someone died," I said with a small smile, hoping to lighten the mood. Ethan let out a short laugh that disappeared almost immediately. "No, nothing like that." We stood in silence for a few seconds, listening to birds somewhere beyond the maple trees. Finally, he looked directly at me. "I think I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For the way I have been acting." I frowned. "You have been acting a little strange." "I know," he nodded. "I kept telling myself it would pass, but it has only gotten worse." My heart began beating a little faster. "What has?" Ethan stared toward the empty street before answering. "Seeing you with Tyler." The words settled quietly between us. I waited for him to explain, but he simply stood there, searching for the right words. "I kept telling myself I was just being protective," he continued. "Then I blamed it on not knowing him. Then I convinced myself I was worried he would hurt you somehow." He smiled weakly. "The problem is, none of those explanations actually fit." I looked at him carefully. "Then what does?" Ethan laughed once under his breath, almost at himself. "That is the question I have been asking myself every night this week." He rubbed the back of his neck, a habit I had seen countless times whenever he felt uncomfortable. "You know what finally made me realize something was wrong?" I shook my head. "When Tyler asked you to dinner, I spent 2 hours trying to remember whether I had ever been jealous of anyone before." My breath caught. He continued before I could interrupt. "I have dated people. You have dated people. I have never cared before. Not once. But suddenly the idea of someone else becoming the person you call first, someone else getting the random texts, someone else hearing about your day before I do." He looked down with an embarrassed smile. I hated it. I had never seen Ethan admit uncertainty about anything. Watching him struggle through feelings he clearly did not understand somehow made every word feel even more honest. "Ethan," I began quietly. "I do not know when it happened," he said. "Maybe years ago, maybe gradually. I only know that this week forced me to look at my own life differently." He met my eyes again, and I realized the happiest parts of my life have always had one thing in common. I already knew the answer before he said it. "You were there." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. My mind raced through 12 years of shared birthdays, road trips, movie nights, holidays, moving boxes, coffee runs, and ordinary moments I had never questioned. Suddenly they no longer looked ordinary. They looked like the foundation of something that had quietly been growing while neither of us was paying attention. I took a slow breath. Can I tell you something? He nodded immediately. When Emma and your mom kept teasing us, I thought they were imagining things. I smiled faintly. Then Tyler asked if we were dating. Then he told me you always looked at me before anyone else. Then I started remembering things I had never noticed. Ethan watched me without saying a word. Like what? Like the fact that you have been my emergency contact for 7 years. His eyebrows lifted. Or that every apartment I have ever chosen has somehow been within walking distance of yours. He laughed softly. I never realized that. Neither did I. I looked down at my hands before finally admitting the truth I had only understood moments ago. I kept thinking I was afraid of losing my best friend. I looked back up. Now I think I was afraid that someone else might become yours. Ethan's eyes widened with quiet disbelief. Before either of us could say another word, the back door opened, and Emma's voice carried across the porch. Mom is wondering where you two disappeared to. She stopped the instant she saw our faces, smiled to herself as though she suddenly understood everything, then quietly closed the door again without another word, leaving the two of us alone with a silence that suddenly felt full of endless possibilities. Emma's footsteps faded back into the house, leaving Ethan and me standing on the quiet porch beneath the soft rustle of the maple tree. We looked at each other for a long moment, and then, almost at the same time, we both laughed. It was not because anything was funny. It was because 12 years of confusion had suddenly become astonishingly simple. I cannot believe it took us this long, I admitted, shaking my head. Ethan smiled, the nervousness finally giving way to relief. To be fair, everyone else figured it out years ago. I laughed again. Apparently, we were the last two people in Seattle to notice. He stepped a little closer, leaving just enough space that neither of us felt rushed. I do not want to lose what we already have, he said quietly. Neither do I. That is what stopped me from saying anything. Me too. The realization settled warmly between us. We had both spent years protecting the same friendship, never realizing that our fear of losing it had kept us from seeing what it had already become. Ethan reached out slowly, giving me every chance to step away if I wanted to. Instead, I closed the small distance between us and wrapped my hand around his. It felt so natural that we both smiled at exactly the same moment. There were no fireworks, no dramatic speeches, no grand declarations. Just two best friends discovering that the place they had always felt safest was standing beside each other. So, Ethan asked with an amused grin, does this mean I finally get to stop pretending I am happy every time another guy asks you out? I laughed. Only if I get to admit I did not exactly enjoy the idea of someone replacing me either. He shook his head in disbelief. We really are hopeless. Maybe, I smiled. But at least we finally caught up with everyone else. Before either of us could say anything more, the back door opened again. This time it was Daniel. He glanced down at our joined hands, then looked up at both of us with an expression that held absolutely no surprise. Only quiet happiness. Well, he said with a satisfied nod. That certainly took long enough. Ethan groaned softly. Please tell me you are not going to say you already knew. Daniel laughed. Son, your mother and I stopped wondering years ago. We were just waiting for you two to arrive at the same conclusion. We followed him back into the backyard, still holding hands without thinking about it. Conversation around the patio gradually quieted as everyone noticed. Emma looked at us first, smiled so widely that she nearly dropped her fork, and whispered, Finally! Olivia turned around from the dessert table, froze for one brief second, and then placed both hands over her heart. Tears immediately filled her eyes, but they were unmistakably joyful ones. Tyler looked from Ethan to me before breaking into an easy smile. He stood, walked over, and offered Ethan his hand. Congratulations, he said sincerely. Take good care of him. Ethan shook his hand gratefully. I plan to. Tyler then turned toward me. I had a feeling my role in this story was different from what I first imagined. I smiled apologetically. Thank you for understanding. He laughed. Honestly, I think all I did was help both of you notice what was already there. Olivia wiped away a happy tear before pointing playfully at the two of us. Now do you believe us? Ethan looked at me, squeezed my hand gently, and laughed with a warmth I had not heard in years. I guess you were all right from the beginning. I smiled back at him, realizing that the feeling of coming home had never been tied to a place. It had always been tied to a person. The family gathered around us once more for another photograph, and this time no one needed to tell us where to stand. Ethan and I naturally found our place side by side, exactly where we had always been. The only difference was that, for the first time, we both finally understood why.